Okay, Bob, no, I understand. You've probably talked about this
Yeah,
several
it's
times
okay.
over the years, but we're going to talk about National. You nearly fell at the first. You nearly fell at the first.
Yes, well, the National never been the greatest first fence for me in my whole career, because I had 10 rides in the National and 3 of them went at the first. I got around 5 times, but the first fence, as I said before, he used to pull very hard and tried to get him to relax, and he was very bold. He went to the first and I was dropped in, and remember my orders were from Josh, drop him in, creep, 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 and take it up going to the last, and how we always rode him. And things didn't work out in the race, but the first fence, as we said, he overjumped it, and I was lucky to get away with it, and he was so bold. He went to the second, and he even stood off even further. He dropped his hind legs a bit in the fence, and he realised how hard it was. And then the horse did have a brain, and from that moment he was a joy to ride. And you know, I can remember jumping beaches about 29th, and 3 fences later, which is Valentine's, I must have had the best run round the canal turn than any jockey had in the history of the race. But I went from 29th to upsides in front, and I can still remember as I touched down in front, I thought, God, I'm getting some rollicking in the stands from the governor. And I thought, Jesus. So then I started looking back through my mind of all previous Nationals. I remember Lucius Bob Davies was told, take it up going to the last. He took it up virtually then. And I looked beside me, and Rubstick had won a National. And then I went through Red Rum's Nationals. I'd jump a fence, then think of another National. Got and jumped the chair, and I thought, well, I'm here now. I better get on and do the job. And, you know, basically I was jumping for fun. And all I could keep thinking now is keep hold of his head. Don't let him down, because if I let him down, he'll break down, you know. So all I could think about, and I'd walked the track twice that morning and saw where all the good ground and the bad ground was. And there was a little patch on the inner that nobody'd used. I stuck on that, and you know, all I could think about was keep hold of his head, keep hold of his head. Don't let him down, because he'll break down. And thankfully, we got home in one piece. And you know, I think, you know, I wasn't a bad judge of pace, actually. In a way, I think I was controlling the race in a way. And you know, basically, I had him in a nice rhythm, and he was jumping for fun. And you know, I know John Thorne came to me at the elbow, but then again, I started going away from him again. So, you know, right place in the right time always helps.
Yeah, 54-year-old at the time, John Thorne on Spartan Missile. And apparently he was absolutely thrilled to bits to be second, and took you out for dinner that night.
Oh, good God, yes. He was a lovely man. You know, on the form book, we were virtually the same, the horses, and he was giving me a little bit of weight, so that turned things round, I think. And, you know, we finished, I think, 3rd and 4th in the Gold Cup years before, and the 2 horses, they'd met 2 or 3 times, and, you know, he'd finished in front of me and I'd finished in front of him, all to do with weight, to be honest. And, you know, a great man, actually. And sadly, it was about 2 weeks later, he got killed in a point-to-point, and that upset me more than anything.
Oh, I didn't know that. And his daughter, Diana, married Nicky Henderson.
Yes, and
So
Jane married George Sloan. And
So a dynasty carries on there.
yes, it carried on, yes.
And you had a hero's return to Findon. About 4,000 people turned up.
Oh, that, believe it or not, that meant more to me than when I won the National, actually. I went down the next morning, and specifically because the horse was coming back from Liverpool that morning, and you know, I thought there'd be a few people there, and but 4,000, you couldn't believe it. And it was an amazing day. I'll always remember that as much as the day I won the National.
And you mentioned that the first fence at the National wasn't your luckiest. You both came to grief the next season, the next season at that first fence.
We did. It was just one of those things. He did exactly what he'd done the year before, but this time he didn't get away with it. And, you know, I hated the first fence. It was the speed they go, I suppose. You know, I was on one of the favourite spitting image. He fell at my very first ride in the national country wedding, got brought down at the first fence. And, you know, otherwise, if I got over the first, I usually had a good ride round.
I mean, so you fell at the first in Old Elyte then, but you'd already won the Grand National on Old Elyte. So even though obviously you'd have been disappointed, was it a case, well, I've done it, so it wasn't as terrible as it might have been?
It wasn't as terrible, you know, I'd won a national, but I wasn't as confident of winning it as I was the year before. The weights had gone up. The horse had one run at Haydock, and for me, I didn't ride him, I was injured, and Ron Barry rode him, and he never won. And, you know, he was a horse that always won first time out, so he would have run a good race. I'm not saying he wouldn't have won, too early to say, but, you know, I wasn't as confident, let's be honest, and when I won it, I was really confident. So I can remember going racing with Jonathan Powell, and Jonathan was writing the book at the time, and he said to me, well, Bob, we've got here. And I said, we haven't just got here, we've won. And I was so confident, unbelievable, a national to be as confident as I was. And I was under a lot of pressure because there was so much press and everything. And I can remember having to do an interview down at Beecher's about half an hour before the national, and they forgot to send a car to pick me up, so I had to run back and change. And but everything went right, and you know, right place at the right time.
So the press had picked up before the race about this potential fairy tale that was going to unfold.
I was second favourite, and you know, it was the build up for 2 weeks before was very, very hard work, and on the morning, you know, it was hard, I promise you. They were even filming me having breakfast, which I didn't have, you know, type of thing.
So how long after that did you decide to retire, and what was the decision based on?
Well, based on two things, really. As I went by the post winning the national, the first thing went through my brain, what a time to retire. And then next second, I thought, well, I'd love to do it again. And I still say it's the worst thing I ever did. I should have retired when I won the national, because I didn't have a bad season the next season, but I had 2 or 3 injuries, back injuries and everything. So I didn't ride that much in the season. And then basically, you know, the disappointment falling at the first. And I wanted to finish on a winner. And I really, because I was brought up in Yorkshire, and I didn't ride in Yorkshire very often. I think I only in my whole career had about 22 rides above Doncaster. And we went up to Wetherby, and horses, Josh started using Wetherby quite a bit, and we're having winners then. I thought, if I can ride a winner here at Wetherby, that would be the day I retire, and looming one at Wetherby. And that was it. As I went by the post and said, that's it for me.
Now, what prompted the decision for you and Jonathan Powell to write the book that ultimately led to you becoming sort of world famous?
I kept getting these letters from publishers and throwing them away and thinking, what a stupid idea. And then one day, Jonathan used to come racing with me a bit. I was driving along, and I said, I had another bloody stupid letter from publishers writing a book. What a stupid idea. And Jonathan didn't say anything for about half an hour, and he said, well, it mightn't be a bad idea. I said, well, if you want to write the book, you get on and do it. You know, I'll work with you and everything. You sort it out, publishers and everything. And it went from there, really. That's how it all started. But if we hadn't been driving up the road, I don't think there would have been a book. And, you know, then, as you know, there was the film after that.
Yeah, the film. I mean, how soon after the book was published was the film?
Well, the book, The book came out, well, the publishers wanted the book before the National, and me being as stubborn as I am, I said, no way, whatever happens in the National, that's the end of the book. So thankfully we went and won the National, and was the best thing that really happened.
So they wanted the book before the
Oh
before
yes,
it
they
even
definitely
won,
wanted it before the National, and you know, I'm stubborn. I said, no way, the National's the end of the book, and they agreed to that, and so I had to cock it up, didn't I, and win the National, so we had to write 2 more chapters. And then after that, Lord Grade rang me up, and we had never met, and he said, could you come up to London and see me? And I thought, Lord Grade, you know, what's he done, you know, sinking in the Titanic or raising the Titanic, every good film he'd been involved in. So I went up to his office, and he said, you know, basically I'd like to do a film and everything. So they got in touch with the publishers, and it went from there, really. But I didn't have a lot to do with it, because really the publishers owned the rights of the book.
And did you have much input to the, you know, to the film? How did you sort of, did they sort of ask you stuff, is this reality or anything like that?
Oh no, I had quite a bit of influence actually. John Irvin, the director, got in touch with me, and he loved racing and other people involved in racing, and I did an awful lot with the scriptwriter. That's the most I did, I suppose, and did a hell of a lot with him. And then basically they started filming. I used to go filming a little bit, not too much, only really press days actually, because making a film is quite boring actually. They keep doing the same scene about 28 times, but I got on really well with John, I must admit, and you know, John, you know, everybody was going looking at the rushes. He said, don't bother going watching them, he said, because I don't even bother. And so it went from there really. So press days really, you know, when we were filming at Aintree, I was up there about 2 or 3 days. We filmed a bit at Cheltenham, Chepstow and everything. I'd go occasionally, really when they wanted me for interviews, to be honest, but you know, I had plenty of other things on.
And how did you feel about the finished product?
Yeah, I remember Lord Grade ringing me up and saying, the film's finished, and I'm going to see it in London 2 days' time, come up and watch it with me. And that was the first time, and but the film then was 2.5 hours, and Lord Grade, you know, watched it in the 2.5 hours, and he said to the people there, his minions, and he said, it's too long. He said, because if it's 2.5, we've got to have a break in the middle those days. And so he said, we're going to have to cut it back, because the film won't work if you've got a break in it. So adverts or whatever you're going to put in the middle. And so he cut it back to 93 minutes. And I think that was a very good move on his side.
And have you ever regretted the book or the film?
No, not at all. Long as the book and film are giving people hope, that means an awful lot to me, I must admit.